Needles, I can get out fast this way. Somebody find my bag when I'm on the way back here. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. It is an absolute pleasure to be in front of so many audience members over this last month and a half. Part of the state party has been going out to Congressional District 3 and going out to Congressional District 2, reaching out to the individuals to create the connection that the party needs, not only with candidates, but also at the volunteer levels. One of the things that I've kind of talked about here recently and getting into the constructs of how the party works, we've got something tomorrow that I believe is going to be truly historic. And so the conversations come up every once in a while. Who are you going to vote for? Or who should I vote for? That's where it's been so great this year to have all those slate cards out there. That helps. But I've been asking groups a little bit different model of that question. I've been asking the question, why do you vote? Not whom do you vote for. Why do you vote? Now, it's been interesting because that gets such a different context. Our problem as Republicans over the last several years hasn't necessarily been who to vote for. It's been whether or not we've shown up. Whether or not we've been engaged from the party level to the volunteers, to the candidates, out into the general public to get enough people to win. And here's why I know that's important. You look 4 years ago, 2 years ago, the people that we're now running against, those candidates won, say Teresa, she lost to Kavanaugh by 288 votes. 288. Devers lost to DeBoer by 105. You go into Lancaster County, and Mary Hilton, who is part of the team here at the state party there, helping out with the resources to get the walk books taken care of, she lost by technically 9 votes a precinct. 9 votes a precinct in her run to be on city council in our at-large concept. So you see, we have an engagement problem for the Republican Party. And here's why. We believe that we're a red state. We have the governor's seat, we've had it for 18 years. We have 5 state officers that go there. We have 5 federal officers that go there. We usually land around 30-ish, somewhere in there, legislative district representatives. So we're a red state. What, that's maybe 50 people at some point? 50 you look at? In Lancaster County, there's over 100 elected officials across the board, from NRDs to the legislative district reps, the city councils, the mayors, 100. I have about 22 Republicans of those 100. Extrapolate that out there. Well, maybe that's just the urbanness of Lincoln. Go onto the Nebraska Democratic website. Don't stay there too long, but go on the Nebraska Democratic website. Go look at their elected officials list. Start scrolling on it on your phone. It'll take you about 25 to 26 flips to go through their list. Gone through city by city by city, Albion, Ainsworth, Scottsbluff, all the way down. There are over 700 elected Democrats across the state of Nebraska. And you say, well, maybe that's just happenstance. No, that's been a plan. Ladies and gentlemen, about 6 years ago, the Democrat chair, Jane Gleb, came in with a plan. Does anybody know that Jane has a book? Jane has a book? I've been talking about this. Harvest the Vote. Harvest the Vote. The front of the cover looks kind of like the Obama posters there. There were the red and the blues there, but this one's green and yellow. Harvest the Vote. How Democrats can win in a Republican state. She had an NPR special. NPR has been very known for their conservative mindset. But she had an NPR special, A Blue Wave Across a Red Prairie, and that was 6 years ago. Now, when you read this book and you hear the methodology behind it, she believes that Democrats could start to go from the ground up, and her goal, of course, is getting to the governor's seat, but going from the ground up by creating the relationships, especially in the western part of Nebraska. Relationships would be cowboy hat to cowboy hat. You would have a Democrat or a Republican, cowboy hat, and the Democrats' relationship to the Republicans' cowboy hat could get one more vote in a Democrat, especially at those local races. Those local school boards, those local city councils, mayors, village boards, NRDs, public service commissions, across the board are heavily lined with Democrats. And you say, what does it matter? We're a Republican state, right? Well, of everything that we've seen over the last 2 years, I think we've understood now that local races and all the elected officials, their value system seems to matter, doesn't it? It seems to matter that if we don't have somebody that believes in our value systems, it affects our school boards. It affects our children's future. It'll affect your taxes. It'll affect the very construct of how your city is built, or even if your roads or bridges are repaired. So you see, this year, I've changed the conversation to be, whom do you vote for, but why do you vote? Robbie, why do you vote?
To change what's right.
To change what's right. Love it. Love it. Denise, why do you vote?
To secure the republic and to make sure the republic moves forward.
Love it. Kathy, why do you vote?
This is my civil duty, and I want to put the people that I believe in office.
Love it. Walt, one more from you. Walt, why do you vote?
I vote for my grandkids.
So today, I just sent an email out. Well, I didn't physically. It was already preset. An email just went out today saying the very same thing. That what usually comes back from Republicans in that response to the question, why do you vote, is patriotic things of duty, honor. It's what our civic duty is. And the two contexts that usually come out of it is somebody talking about that I need to do this, this is a right, this is a freedom, this is my civic duty to do it. When it's a veteran, they usually indicate where, when, and how they fought for this country. And they'll tell you that they're going to keep fighting for this country because that freedom to vote is what they fought for. And even though they're not in that military uniform anymore, they're going to still fight and serve this country by voting and getting others, encouraging others to vote. And then the conversation usually switches to the future, talking about kids, grandchildren, and usually there's a reflection, a little bit of a pause. They think about, how did we ever let it get to this point? And you see that little internal struggle as somebody goes, was it just because I didn't care? I just didn't think it was going to ever happen this way? And then somebody puts their foot down, or somebody says very defiantly, but I'll be darned if I let that happen from here on out. Okay? So that's the conversation over the next 24 hours that you need to have with anybody and everybody, via text message, via phone call, why you vote. Because the engagement problem with the Republicans in Nebraska has made us miss having the leaders that have the same value set as us, the conservative mindset, by 105 votes, by 288 votes. We've missed that. Now, the other opportunity that has happened this year, obviously, July 9th, I became the chairman. Moving forward over this last 4 months, what I have seen is an amazing amount of engagement internally amongst Republicans, leaders stepping up, and utilizing the resources of the party, including the candidates. See, the resources of the party is not just money. That was the first thing I was told. You ruined the party. We're never going to get any more dollars into this party. And we've lost everything. You've handed everything over to the Democrats. But the true resource of the party is you. It's John. It's Katie. It's Walt. The people of the party are the true resources of the party. Because your level of influence, your level of engagement, is what truly makes somebody go and do something, like voting, or volunteering, or walking and knocking. I spent the last 4 days calling every single candidate that I've got a list for, statewide and up, just thanking them. Because this is a very hard thing to do. Thanking them for walking. I've called volunteers and thanked them for doing what they've done this year. Engaging in a way that has never been done before. By going out and creating the relationships with the voters at the door, not just through a piece of paper, but actually creating the relationship at the door. What you see in Douglas County with their neighborhood program, what you see in Lancaster County with the neighborhood program, this has changed Republican politics, and I hope it stays this way. Because if you continue to relate to people at their level of volunteerism, at their level of being a voter, you're going to get the outcome that you're looking for. We were talking over here, same thing when it comes to being a disciple. Everybody will be at a different level of where they're at spiritually. And that's not for us to determine. What we can do is utilize our resources. As a disciple, we have the Word of God, we have our imagery, we have the light, and we can show them to the doorstep. We can show them to the door. And I truly believe, as a disciple, it's our job to do that. I can even give them the keys to that door to Christ. Might even be able to help them open that door. But after that, they have to take that walk with Christ. That's their job. It's not my job. In fact, that's a sin if I try to take that job. If I try to take that walk with Christ and His ability to move their heart and their mind and their spirit, I'm taking that away. We can do the same thing with voters. You can show them how a Republican Party can be a positive Republican Party. Every single item that came out of the Republican Party, whether it's radio commercials, we had Hispanic radio commercials this year. Does anybody know that? Have you heard that? Those commercials are designed to connect in the very way that you can connect to a Latino community. Now, am I a Latino? No. But my kitchen manager has worked with me for 14 years. And I have a relationship with the Latino. I have a friendship. I have a kinship. I've gone to the quinceañeras. I've seen his little boy grow up. He's seen my 15-year-old to 5-year-old grow up. And when we have these conversations about where Nebraska and this country is going, we want the very same thing. We want the very same thing. We want conservative, traditional, constitutional values. And even though it's coming from different perspectives, what it was like in Mexico for him, and what we believe our good life in Nebraska is, we want the very same things. And so honestly, some of the wording that came into that Hispanic commercial was because he gave it to me. Vote, because you count. That means something in the Latino culture. Votas porque tú cuentas. That's in there because my relationship with him. We've created relationships with Vietnamese communities in Lancaster County. It's interesting, in that community, you never sign your name on a dotted line. You don't do that. But yet you can connect through the minister there, and he can give them the confidence that it's okay to register to vote here. You came over here for this very right, to not fear registering to vote, and then in voting, getting to have a voice. See, as Republicans, we've been fighting for our voice this last couple of years. Fighting against tyranny. Trust me, I live in Lancaster County. I had 700 days of mask mandates. I'm not criticizing the component of mask and health. I'm just saying 700 days became excessive. I have a San Francisco mayor. I have a San Francisco police chief. I only have one Republican on 7 city council members. I only have 2 on my county commissioner out of 5. I'm sitting with the health director. I went and met with the health director. Does anybody know that? I went to met with her as a Lancaster County chairman going, I can't affect this situation if I don't build a relationship here. Not because I thought I was going to ever change her mind, but I can't have the influence on it. And so Dawn, who's my statewide county coordinator, the admin, was my executive director at the time. And we met with her just so I could gain the perspective, because that was my job to facilitate that. So you see, when we start to build the relationships, even with those that we know we're not going to change the mindset with, we have context. And it takes a long time to do this. And that's why we started in Lancaster County in September, to build these relationships. Out of these relationships, eventually, the opportunity to have influence, positively influence, because you build trust. I ask people from the very first day on, I'm not asking for people to trust me that this is the right way to run a party. I just ask for people to give me the opportunity to earn their trust. So over this last 4 months, we have gone into the office every day, all 5 of us, Mary, Don, Todd, Meg, myself, every day to build relationships with the counties, with the candidates, with the volunteers, to build the foundation of the party. We have an executive committee. We have a central committee. We have the state delegates. They're all leaders. We have county chairs. They're all leaders. For the first time in I don't know how many years, probably a decade or more, we have a budget and finance committee. Constitutionally required, didn't have it. The budget and finance committee is 9 members that dictate how I spend the money. They gave me a budget to spend on candidates this year, and I followed through with it. Met it right at the penny there. So through that, we facilitated basically the mail program, as well as radio commercials. And through that, every single item that had the NEGOP name on it, I looked at. That was about 150 pieces of material, including digital graphics, that I reviewed to make sure that spelling was correct. Trust me, there was some bad ones out there. Grammatically done, very little with the content. It's a very positive year. And that's a context that I think we can incrementally say can affect people's beliefs of what a Republican is. It's also why we created the video. People have seen the Back to the Basics video. It's about our school systems, and it reminds people, it gives a remembrance of what schools used to be about. Reading, writing, arithmetics, learning in kindergarten about colors and backpacks and stickers. That's what you learned. And then when you went on to middle school, it was about learning how to use your hands, your home economics, learning how to become socially connected to your classmates through kickball and sports. And then those fun things that only happen in that 4 years of your life in high school. Proms, homecomings, Friday night lights, basketball games, all the championships that we feel right now. I feel blessed that I grew up in a time that got to have that. Not only with the cultural change that's trying to rip that away from them, but for the 2.5-ish years where those seniors lost what it meant to be a senior in high school because of COVID. You can never get that back. You can go to college when you're 90. It's really hard to be a senior when you're 90. Well, different type of senior, but. And I feel bad for the kids, our children, that missed that opportunity. Well, this Back to the Basics video was done with intention because I was tired of what the Democrats say our messages for schools. I was tired of having them set our identity. So you see, now we have this positive, neutral platform, as well as a formed party that believes in the people, believes that the Constitution, Robert's Rules of Order, our platform values, those are our guiding documents. Those are our guiding principles that move the party forward. If we do this correct, folks, I believe our goals of 36 strong legislators, 36 conservative-minded individuals will happen tomorrow, which means you become filibuster-proof. I think the 4 Board of Education individuals will all win tomorrow. Not only do I say this with confidence because I believe in how we've changed the party, but I'm also looking at the numbers. The engagement, the turnout of voters that have already happened in early ballots, and I'm just saying as far as early ballots are indicative of where we're at. Other than 1 or 2 heavily Dem environments in Douglas County, you are in a lead by 300 to 500 votes in almost every LD. And then you look at the ones that you can get a broader spectrum on, such as Marnie's. She's in the lead by 2,000. 2,000 early Republican voters. Strong GOP versus strong Dems, adding in the weak Dems and the weak GOPs, and that's more of about a frequency level versus, why are they weak type thing. It's about an engagement level. We can see if they vote often enough. She's ahead of early return. Now, I don't know how they voted, but I would honestly believe that they voted for Marnie. The other way that I can look at in Lancaster County, you're normally down 2.5 to 1 in early returns. So when I ran for county commissioner in 2020, I've been a candidate before. I ran for county commissioner, a good blend of rural and urban. I had to walk and knock in areas such as Capitol Beach to the corner of basically 27th and O Street, all the way out to Ashland. Sorry, not Ashland, to Raymond, out to Malcolm. A good blend of everything. I'd walk and knock to a door that have a Ring doorbell on it right there, and I'd step back 6 feet in the middle of COVID going, "Hi, I'm not here to kill you. Take my material and vote, okay?" And then run away. And then I would walk out in Malcolm, and I'd knock on, there was no doorbell. I'd knock on the door, and like, "Come on in." "Okay, it's me." That context in 2020 By the time the 8:15 returns of early ballots came in, I was down 14,000 to 6,000. I mean, it's just hard. So that takes so much more day of engagement to recover from, and I lost 5,000. And then you went into, I ran 2 races. I helped run 2 races for LPS School Board that same municipal cycle in 2021. Ran Christina Campbell's, and I ran Dr. Patessis. Same thing even in a smaller district race there, down 2-1. Other than the 2 Democrat really strong holds that we have in Lancaster County, we've gotten back to being down by only 50% in those. So if there's a 10,000 Dems, there's about 7,500 or 8,000 Republicans that have turned out there. Before, it'd be 10,000 to 5,000 or 10,000 to 4,000. I've never seen this amount of engagement by the Republicans early on. And at least for the context of this year, for the election integrity and before the election accountability, I actually call it election accountability and voter verification. I like the words election accountability because I want to know 1 vote, 1 count, and I want it done accurately. And I want to know voter verification. I want to know that that person is a legitimate voter from that precinct and not living in some other place. Election accountability and voter verification, at least for this year, we've gotten the engagement level increased so we can win and get ourselves on a better path. And folks, we had to do that. If we didn't engage them at the level that they're going to vote, whether it's because they are a military person that's across the seas, or maybe it's a person that is not going to be in town just on Tuesday, but they don't want a ballot so they can go into the election commissioner and vote that way. If we didn't get that lead this year, or at least get it back to tied, which you have done in Douglas very well, we know that we're going to show up day of. And I think you're going to see historic numbers of turnout. And I've got at least some validation to this belief, because in Lancaster County, when we took over and said we're going to do things a positive way, we're going to do it by the Constitution, we're going to believe in our platform, and we're going to believe in our people, we had the biggest county convention turnout that has ever happened, ever. In the election that I won to become the Lancaster County chairman, there were 300 delegates and 100-ish showed up. So I was elected. 6 months later, when you got to have new delegates sign up, we had over 605 delegates sign up to be Lancaster County delegates, and 476 showed up at a convention to move this party forward. 605 people in all, 606 people in all from candidates and everybody showed up for that county convention. That wasn't just the only win. In the primary that happened, Lancaster County is very apathetic sometimes, especially in primaries. Why show up? Republicans just going to get through, right? The most amount of turnout we've ever had in a governor's race before was about 31,000 Republicans turn out. Most of the other primaries, whether it was a governor's primary or a presidential primary, most of those primaries we've had under 30,000 of the 80,000 Republicans that are there. We've had some as low as 25. Again, in these primaries that are as keen as a governor's race or a presidential race. This year's primary, and I know it was a governor's race, I compared it from 8 years ago where there had to be a change anyway. This year we had 38,000 out of the 77,000 Republicans in Lancaster County. That was a 43% turnout. That has never happened in Lancaster County, ever. So that's the second metric, that when you go out and connect to them at the door, when you create a neighborhood captain program, you create your foundation on your platform values and your beliefs. When you create that, people will come. People will be engaged. We can no longer say at the party that it's the voters' fault that we didn't win. It was our fault. It was always our fault. We're not setting the right value systems. We're not setting the right structure, the foundation, and not believing in the true resource of the party, the people. Thank you, all of you, not only being here, but everything that you've done for every single candidate, the walking and knocking, the phone calling, the donations, the time, your talents. Thank you. You will be a part of history this year. In every aspect that you've done it this year, you will be a part of history, and you will have made a difference in your community, not only in who we send to the governor's office and who we send to the federal office there, but you will make a difference in all those local races where we know that this truly matters. And you will have cut that 700 Democrat total you're going to cut it in half this year. Thank you so much. Stay. That's right. I figured also I would be fine with some time here. I do have to get back to the office here. But I do have some time for some question and answers. If anybody, I think that's where you do the questions and I do the answers, I think. We'll see. Or it could go the other way. I already asked you a question. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Matt.
I have a question about what happened this summer mostly. I know you have to be very diplomatic, but I'm curious what caused a lot of the discontent within the party, and it sounds like a lot of it had to do with engagement, and I heard this from people who were involved in that convention that summer. What can you tell me about what you know of that was dissatisfaction within the party, and what you're doing to address it?
Well, and here's something that I think we need to take in context. If it would have been such a media buzz that this was truly driven by Trump, or truly driven by Herbster, you would have seen that. Because there would have been a connection. I would have had Trump on my phone. There would be some sort of connection to make that happen. What this truly was, at least from my perspective, and I get it, maybe that's not everybody's perspective. Beyond just this cycle, there has been years, decades, even more, that this party has had an internal struggle. And over time, those wounds have been building up and building up and building up. I've had people that'll tell me, back in 2005, 2004, somebody did this, and I'm like, that's 18 years ago. And it colors the way that you think about somebody politically. And this has been happening for decades, to be honest. Now, the party's apparatus, what it truly is not supposed to be a heavy hand. The party has a formal structure. The executive committee, the central committee, the governing body of the delegates are the ones that are supposed to determine the outcomes. Yes, I'm the face of the party, or an executive director, or the leadership teams, county chairs, they're faces of the party, but they're not the heavy hand. And I think in the past it's been a heavy hand that's been brought down on people, or counties, or elected officials, even to the point that we've fought R versus R, with an amount of money that should never have been spent. And maybe that is why we lost some of those races. Let's be honest with ourselves. If we're not going to look in a mirror and be honest with ourselves, then we're never going to be able to move forward. Okay? This state party now has an opportunity to heal. Even moving forward, where there's still going to be R versus R races because of nonpartisan races that could have both R's come through, I was very keen this year that we did not use the party's finances or any of the design work against a Republican. That is a metric change. Now, what happened leading up to this was also a very heightened progression. Yes, there was a contentious primary. Okay? It was. But it showed that there's a third of the party believing a lot of different things. A Herbster mentality, a Pillen mentality, as well as a Lindstrom mentality. And the loyalties and the passions reached a peak. Okay? But you also have the same thing in CD1. You have a wonderful gentleman over there that is fully prepared to lead this lead this congressional district. I was concerned that there would be the same concept because he wasn't chosen to be in the special election. The party picking winners. I don't like that. You know who picks the winners? The voters. You do. You're the ones that are supposed to pick that. An endorsement process does help with that, give guidance. And we rewrote part of the endorsement process. The state doesn't endorse underneath the state level. The counties do. The counties have the autonomy now to be able to help, leading into primaries, do the endorsement process, which should be interviews and doing something that actually shows an engagement to them. They can't conflict at a state level, but they can help endorse. Then you led into the convention. Here's how you know that Republicans still have some core values that are in them. There were 5 individuals that were duly elected to be voting members at that convention. They won by creating relationships at their county parties to become duly elected state delegates and vote there. And the party said, you're not allowed to talk bad about us or about our candidates, and so you don't get the rights to be there. I said all 5 of their names, and unanimously, darn near close unanimously, the 376 delegates that were there said your freedom of speech will not be repressed. We do not live in a tyrannical environment. You are allowed back in to be voters. It was that unanimous. So you see that conversation leading up to a month ago, those 5 individuals, regardless of your beliefs of who those are, the one thing that we will not stand for is the loss of our freedoms. And those individuals had the freedom, the right, to be duly elected delegates, which they had earned in proper county conventions across the state of Nebraska. It wasn't just in Lancaster. That led up to the opportunity that enough people said, we need to have a change. And again, what shows that is that that was also Herbster people and Pillen people and Lindstrom people all voting for that same concept. When the opportunity was presented to change the Constitution that would allow for a chairman to be removed, and that occurred, there was cheering for that. But then when Dan Welch was removed, there was no cheering. This was not personal. And that's something that we should also take out of it. It was somber, and it was understood that this was a potentially new way to run the party. Earlier that day, I spent about 15 to 20 minutes talking with Dan. I believe in the relationships, even if I know something's going to happen. We spent a good 20 minutes just talking. He'd hoped that the party would be able to move forward. He understood that his goose was cooked, as he said. But I said, Dan, I want you to understand this is not about you. It never was. And I think he honestly understood that. I also believed in relationships to the highest level. I had a conversation with Governor Ricketts that Thursday as well. I said, I'm a little concerned about this convention. There's a lot of passion, a lot of energy going into it. But I want you to know I'm not here to fight you. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to go and set up that special meeting with them to 2 or 3 days before it has happened. Walk into a hornet's nest, if that's what you want to look at it as. But I believe it's my job to facilitate those relationships. I believe it's my job to at least try. That's what I think has changed. That's what I think led up to it. And I think honestly, as people looked at an opportunity to do something differently from the state party and how that could matriculate down to the county and let them thrive, you've seen the results of that. The county party has not been the heavy hand controlling in this election. I'm sorry, the state party. The county parties have done so much more work. The leaders in the county have engaged so many more people. And even just the peripheral things such as slate cards. I've never seen this many slate cards. And you know what that helps us do? Get incremental votes. We solve that 288 gap. We solve that 105 gap. Because we've engaged people in a way at all facets, and we've let leadership thrive. That's what I think happened. Across the board, believe in something that is supposed to be about the people. Any other questions? Thank you. It was a good question. Yes?
I know you're talking about getting out to vote tomorrow, and I think we're all pretty much on board with that. But can you briefly tell us what the long-term goals are for the NGOP so we can understand where we're going? Since once tomorrow's come and gone, we really need to focus long-term.
Well, and Todd, my political director, says, so tomorrow we have the wins that we believe we're going to have, and then Wednesday we're not spiking the football. Okay, we're not. Football's maybe not the best reference around these parts anymore. Just, it fits. Because we're not done yet. If you are have your email with us, you'll see that my email day today says that I guarantee you November 9th, what we're going to do is continue to work. And that's what I ask everybody else to do. So constitutionally, we're required to make a legislative plan. Very similar to the term that you've heard, this commitment to America that's out there, that started from the RNC level there. This commitment to America is very similar to our legislative plan, except we started it 3 weeks earlier, just so everybody knows. That legislative plan is designed to help the relationships with the senators. That's 2 ways. One, they've been sitting on islands out there. When they have good bills coming forth, and they need people to be in these subcommittees talking about them, nobody shows up. Nobody shows up. On some of the very key bills that help us out, whether it's constitutional carry or amending our abortion policies, even fiscal ones, when it's dealing with taxes. They're sitting there out on an island. And it was so prevalent to me when dealing in Lancaster County. Senator Clemens is now in Lancaster County, not just in Cass. He came to one of our first or second meetings where we were, instead of having 30 people show up, we were having 125 people show up. And he was fighting for us because in Lancaster County we had all the ballot boxes, we had Zuckerberg dollars. He had written bills for us. And so he shows up going, I feel like I'm always in this, bubble that nobody even knows who I am. And so he was expecting nobody to know who he was. And he walked into applause. People saying thank you. He walked out going, I never expected that. I didn't know people were paying attention. So you see now through this legislative plan, we're going to work with election integrity. It has 7 bullet points. Election integrity, energy independence, family structure and abortion and dealing with that context here. Concealed carry, the freedoms that we're supposed to have at the unicameral that we're not following constitutionally, such as the secret ballots that are happening. These are all agriculture. These are all being done in subcommittees with more Republicans, more leaders of the party, and the relationships with senators and their legislative aides to write the bills and create the framework of the branding that needs to happen when we need to promote that this is in front of the subcommittee. So that's one component. We're not done November 8th. We didn't just go to get 36 senators there. We didn't go to just get these school boards there. We have a great relationship with Kirk Penner, who's been sitting there fighting like crazy, and he needs that support. But you know what he's going to keep doing? Building the relationships with the Republicans and his new 3 other Board of Education members so that they can foresee anything, stop it, and prepare for 2 years down the road where they can flip 2 more. So we're going to work through the legislation. I think you're going to see the most amount of legislation, good, conservative, positive messaging legislation in this unicameral cycle than you've ever seen. We can truly do tax reform. We can do something from the very onset and affect the sales tax. We can talk about our property taxes, whether it's EPIC consumption or whether it's EPIC or the consumption tax. This can get moved through, especially if we just get out of our way and say this is what's best for Nebraska. And then my goals, assuming that I'm voted in again in the spring, I believe that we can get to 40 legislators, 40 senators in 2024. My goal is that the counties will have found individuals for the termed out senators that will be happening in those 2 years, and finding conservative leaders ready to step up into those positions. Because you've got to remember, we're in a unicameral, so we only get 1 set of people building these laws for us. Every other state has the 2, a House and Senate concept. There are some states that have supermajorities in both houses, even with the blue governor. And we can't even get beyond the filibuster threshold. You're going to get 35 or 36 this year. And in 2024, the LDs will be all the odd-numbered LDs. We're going to retain the ones that we need to retain, and I think you're going to flip another 4 or 5 more. And if you can get to 40, folks, we will have not restored the good life, we will have protected the good life. See, that's what the conversation is always about with the good life. That's only a frame of reference if everybody understands what that is. You know what it is. You know what it is in our school systems and our agriculture and the way that we live the life that we believe in is why we're Nebraskans. And if we do this right, over the next 2 years, we'll have protected the good life. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Eric, for coming today.
Yeah.
I appreciate your talk. It's good. Got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to push the county governments or the county central committees to primary people that have gotten into office? Because we need 36 strong conservatives. We're going to find out that those aren't all strong conservatives. We know that.
Yep, we found that in the
Are
past
you
as well.
willing to push the counties so that they primary people that aren't voting with the conservative values that we put them there to vote with?
I'm willing to promote the endorsement process to happen correctly. We have a constitution in almost all the counties. I'm going to be honest. We don't even have 93 county parties. We have maybe 87, maybe 88. We just formed Saunders. Folks, Saunders County didn't have a county party for several years because of your congressional district chair, Doug Pedersen, and the many people that he believed in. We got it formed here in the middle of an election cycle, and 100 people showed up to it. but they need the resources. Constitutions, platforms, finances, a bank account. You, in the county, should feel confident to make the changes to match your conservative values. You should do exactly what you feel like we did at the state party. You walk in with that Constitution, you walk in with Robert's Rules of Order, and you say, this is what the people believe in. And if the leadership isn't doing it that way, you can change that. We've already had 4 chairmen changed out this year, and the county party didn't do it. The state party didn't do it. I can, if I see a county chair not doing their job correctly, I can present to the executive committee, 36 people, that this county chair is not doing their job. They could vote them out. I could present to them a replacement. They could vote in that replacement, and that county chair is then supposed to move forward having elections. I could do that, but we had 4 opportunities this year where we didn't have to do that. The leadership around that county chair, the central committee members, used the influence of their constitution to affect the change, and the people of the county did that. I would expect and promote the very same thing. It is time consuming. I get it. And it's a lot easier if I just walk in and made that change for you. If I just walked in with a heavy hand. But I'm going to be honest. That just sets the precedent back the way it was before. And if you don't agree with the way the leadership is at the time, then you're going to be on the losing end of that. I want the county parties to form their constitutions, to form their central committees, to form their executive committees, have a fully formed constitution that believes in an endorsement process that includes vetting them. In Lancaster County, we did it. January, March, we had 2 sets of vetting. Again, I have so many elected officials, I had to space it out. And up until the heavy hand of the NEGOP came down and said you're not allowed to do that, we even had Congressman Fortenberry ask for the endorsement of Lancaster County. And we did it via Zoom with him because we believed that that relationship of the central committee creating the endorsement process is the best metric of who the county moves forward with. Okay? The central committee at the state, 166 members, approve the endorsements. We're going to do that in a vetting process where they'll actually be in front of that committee, because that's the proper way to do it, and that's what's in our Constitution. I highly encourage the county parties to do that. And again, over this next year, we can help facilitate that. That's the right way to do it. And that's the way, as long as we have people that are conservative minded, as long as you have that.
Really, not moderate.
Not moderate.
Thank you.
Well, and I've said that.
January is the vote.
Yeah.
January is when everyone comes up for election.
We aren't, and moderate is what the term that gets put onto us, and in that middle ground there, I'm going to be honest. Most Nebraskans, independent, Democrat, Republican, most Nebraskans aren't moderate. We're modest. We're just trying to live our life devoid of politics, not be a part of any of this. But there did come a point where we said, all right, enough is enough. As I said in my email today, people finally said, I'll be damned if I let this go any farther. And that's what we said in Lancaster County. I didn't go into the convention change just on a whim and a prayer. And I didn't go in with torches and pitchforks. I worked through a process of creating relationships with people that had been in the party for decades, saying, is this a good thing? If we make this change, and we believe in people again, will it allow more to matriculate up? More conservative leaders, more conservative elected officials, and our values to be the foundation. Will that happen? So I encourage you to do it the right way. And I've done that all across the board. By the Constitution, changing the Constitution, know your Robert's Rules of Order. When you go into those meetings, so that's what the will of the people want, and that's where God's going to guide you, then it will happen. Yes, Steve.
Eric, just speaking of Constitution and things, what is the chance of changing the electoral system in Nebraska so that we don't end up with a blue dot?
Oh, that's a good question there. I haven't researched, so in Nebraska, we technically don't have a constitution, we have revised statutes, that's what it's called. And I'm not being critical, I got corrected on that by somebody like, okay, we don't have a constitution, got it. Revised statute. No, it's okay. I think if that's something that's presented there, that's going to come through. The governance subcommittee there. I think if that's something that's presented there might be that opportunity. Incremental. I'm going to say incremental change is better, and I'm going to be honest. The only reason that it's even a whisper in our mind that that's something that needs to be changed is because our engagement makes us feel like we're risking that blue dot. If we do this right, you're not going to feel that risk. We've got a lot of other things in front of us here, from our taxes to the fiscal responsibility, the government funding, how that's working, our school systems. Go look at your property taxes. There's 15 different line items there. We're the 6th highest state in property taxes. I'm going to be honest. Congressman Fortenberry said, Eric, as you're running, I'll go endorse you, I'll give you some money, but if you say the word property taxes in 2020, I'm backing out. And he's just being honest with me. You need to tell stories there. You need to be connected to people. And I've taken that with him. I've taken that from him. That was a great concept that year. But this year, of all years, property taxes have become so, taxes in general, inheritance tax, the veterans and their retirement tax, our sales tax. I mean, at this point, we have to have some relief somewhere. So I think if we move forward in that conversation about the key priorities there, I think that blue dot, because we're going to do work, I don't think you're going to risk that ever again if we do the job. If we don't spike the football on November 9th and go, we're done, we got it. Because then we were only in it for the power.
Right.
We were only in it for the money, the status, the titles. I'm not in it for that. And I wouldn't imagine that people have been so invested this year of their time and energy if they weren't in it for something else beyond the power. Thanks, Steve. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Eric, I was going to ask about immigration. It's a very big concern of mine. And with the invasion at our southern border, they now say that every state is a border state. And, but I never hear candidates or elected officials at any level speak about immigration. And it does impact pretty much every other issue that they talk about in their campaigns is impacted by immigration. And I just wondered if you can tell me why you think that is. Do they avoid it because it's not a popular topic? You talk about it and you might be called a racist or a hater or many other names. And I just wondered why you think it's not in the campaigns or.
Well, I think it's a context in a lot of things. You wouldn't talk about education for the 4 years ago. You wouldn't mention anything like that, because if you mentioned education, you mentioned property taxes. You're trying to cut funding from our kids. You got to be. You have to be conscious of that. You really do. This year, you could ask me the same question of why we don't talk about Roe versus Wade. Now, our platform said we want the abolishing of Roe versus Wade. We accomplished that. It also says that in respect to the safety of the mother, abortion is not allowed. Okay? Which is, again, why we need to change that narrative so people don't say that we just want a zero abortion there. There is some construct of that. If that had been a message this year, that would have been a challenge. Do we all know how they believe? I do. I know how all of them believe that the killing of innocent lives, innocent babies, they will not stand for it. I think when it comes to immigration, it's the same thing. I think it is a tough conversation, and it's not a one-size-all-fits solution, but they're aware of it because we're seeing the effects, not only in how our crime's going up, and this isn't because they're criminals by nature. There's the opportunity for more criminals to come through. The increase in drugs, especially drugs like fentanyl, that's happening. But let me give you a context of the other day. My same kitchen manager, the one that's been with me for 14 years, he was very blessed to be able to go back to Mexico about 3-4 years ago. We have a restaurant that we're successful enough he can take time off. He was able to see his father, and strangely enough, it was fortuitous because 3.5 months later, he passed away, and he was blessed to be able to see him. And he's gone through seeing my father passed away, so just another bonding experience. His mother is of age enough. There's a way that a single parent that's left in Mexico, of age, and not able to see their children that are in America after a certain length of time, should be able to come across. She's done everything perfectly. She goes up to the embassy last week with all of her paperwork. This is her second time of doing it. And they just have individuals going, yep, nope, 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 yep. Well, she was one of the nopes. She's 60 plus years old. She has all of her children over here legally. She's lost her husband. She only has 2 remaining people over there. And she hasn't been able to see any of her kids in 15 years. 15 years.
She could walk right across the border.
You're right. You're right. And we talked about that. And he's so mad. He's so mad at the embassy. He loves America. He came here for a reason. He's so mad at some person sitting behind a desk just saying, nope, and then yep. So you see, this is a big topic. And I see it. He never showed it at work, but we were sitting down, and he goes, I guess got to tell you something. And I'll be honest, I know the Latino community pretty well. They don't talk about their feelings often. You have to really have connected with them to have that relationship. Like my mom got denied, and we were planning for it. She was going to be able to come over here, then COVID hit. She was going to try and hit it around Mother's Day. It was going to be a perfect surprise. And she should have been able to pass through last week, which means she could have come maybe around Christmas time. So I said, next year you're going back twice. He has the money, he can afford to do it. You're going to go back around Mother's Day, which is still in May, they're just a couple days different. You're going to go back in Mother's Day. And for them, Halloween actually is different. Halloween is about the Day of the Dead and the remembrance of the families and going to the churches, or going out to the gravesite and giving to the dead their life back in. I said, you're going back around that time again. I don't care what the football schedule looks like there. I'll figure it out. But I'm not going to have you lose that opportunity to go see your mom again. And if she can't come over here, you're going over there. It's not an easy conversation. And it's not something that I think you can give a context on a piece of paper, on your palm card, in a flyer, and even at the door. It's going to be hard. But here's what we can say. If we've done this right from the party level, and these subcommittees start working together with the senators, and actually do their jobs right, building the relationship and writing these laws, maybe we can have an impact on how Nebraska is affected. We also need to then increase our police force, not defund them. We need to give our state patrol, our sheriffs, and our city police more resources. That's more people. And they need to feel that support beyond just the pay. They need to feel that support beyond when one of them, like say Mario 2 years ago, was killed, and there was that extreme outpouring of support. They need to feel it every day. I'm fortunate enough to have a relationship with an officer that usually does the night shift. He's been on the police force for 30 years, especially the drug unit there. Strangely enough, they park in the parking garages downtown in the Haymarket, and that's where he can do some of his paperwork. I've met him up there several times. We've had great conversations about concealed carry and Lincoln and all that sort of stuff. My son now works with me at Rodizio Grill, where I'm the manager. And that night, on Saturday night, we go up there about 10 o'clock, and there's Bill. And he waves at me, and he pulls his cruiser on up there. I said, Bill, I want you to meet my son. I want you to meet Matthew. Matthew, this is Bill. We've had great relationships. Because I want my 15-year-old to understand that the police are your friend. The police can be respected. And I want to build that relationship for him. And that's another way to show support of our officers. It's a big conversation, and I get it. But I think if we get the numbers right, we can get the leadership to see a path forward. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to start at one point. Great question, Susan.
I think we have time for one more quick question.
Mark, did you raise your hand?
I was going to make a comment. You know, I'm an immigrant, and I studied immigration inside out for many, many years. I don't think it's a big problem. I think it is absurd to claim that we are the great nation that we are, and we cannot figure out a system where we can have a legal means to fulfill, you know, the needs of the people to come in and out and the fulfill of the people, and at the same time have a very, you know, strong immigration system. I found it absurd that countries like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt are able to fulfill their immigration system, and we cannot do that. I think it's crazy.
I think you're right. And it's either because of apathy and not putting the effort into it. This isn't a Trump thing. This isn't an Obama thing. This has been us as a country losing respect for people. Enough that we'd say we can figure this out because we came over here at some point for the freedoms that were here. And I know darn well that's why a majority of them are coming over. Because the freedoms and the better life that can be here and how they can help those back home. And if we see them as people, contributing people, you'll put a lot of different mindset into solving that problem. Mark, you made a valid point. All right, y'all. Thank you so much again. I appreciate the time.